Do you have a desire for something more in your Christian walk? Do you have a hunger for the deeper things of our God, whose name is Yahweh in Hebrew? Be encouraged, be inspired, be informed as you search out the truth. As it relates to the Christian and Hebrew history of our faith in Jesus, whose name is Yeshua in Hebrew. Dr. Larry J. Pratt and Rabbi Paul Todd will share the scriptures in our Bible that God said are forever and apply to all Christian believers. These scriptures will reveal the constitution and nature of the soon-coming kingdom of Yeshua, when he rules as our king on earth. In Matthew 25, there are 10 virgins who are called the bride of Jesus Christ, and they are righteous. But only 5 have enough oil. And what did Yeshua, Paul, and others intend for Christians to do when they said, "Follow me"? Is this a reference to the bride of Christ? Get your coffee, get comfortable, and hear a right now word of God of how Torah, or God's teaching and instruction, is to be written upon our hearts. This biblical wisdom will illuminate our Christian walk and help us to be the salt and light that is forever and has never changed. Learn the blessing prayers of Yahweh over his bride and our children and our grandchildren for greater blessing, such as protection, healing, revelation, and answers to many questions.
Today's teaching is kind of special. It's on the 10 Commandments. And I'm going to add the rapture to that. Okay? So, it's all about Torah. And so what we try to do here at the church, you see, God doesn't change. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And what he spoke on at Mount Sinai is true today. And it won't go away. Jesus said, Yeshua himself said, "When I die, I will not nail my Father's Torah to the cross." I will not do that. And how do I know he said that? Because he says, "Not one jot or tittle from Torah will pass away until the new heavens and the new earth." That's after the 1,000 years. So to me, that answers that question. So today, and this is what the Lord told me, today is an Elijah moment in time.
Hallelujah.
Because Elijah said, "Choose this day who you will serve, Yahweh and Torah, or your tradition." What's about to happen, and you know, you've heard me talk about it before, and there are lots of teachings back there, is Jacob's trouble, tribulation, and the wrath of God. That's what's coming on the earth, and it's coming real soon. And most Christians think it's going to be a cakewalk. They do. They really do. They think, "Lord loves me. He's going to come back. He's going to save me. Everything's going to be okay." That's not what our Bible teaches, okay? There's not going to be a rapture for Christians. Not with what's about to happen. There will be at some point, but it's after the 1,000 years, and I'll show you that.
We find ourselves in our readings talking about the Big Ten. The 10 Commandments, the 10 utterances, the 10 words, and so forth. And actually, they're not really just 10 commandments. There's nowhere that it says 10 commandments. So what are they? There's more than that. Now, they're part of Christian culture. And they are even in our movies. You cannot do the 10 commandments without thinking of Moses carrying the 2 big blocks of rock down from the mountain. There he is. Now, you know this is an actual photograph because it's black and white. Okay? They were given to us by the hand of Moshe so that we would know what Yahweh's will for us is. They're not. Okay, get your Bibles, open them up, Exodus 20. They are found in Shemot, Exodus 20, verse 1 to verse 17. That is the traditional, or the tradition of the 10 words. Verse 1, whose commandments? The first one says, and Elohim spoke all these words, saying. Now, I ain't no Hebrew expert, but I'm working on it, okay? I looked up the Hebrew for this verse, and translating it carefully, it says, Elohim spoke all these words, saying. Doesn't say anything else. These are Yahweh's commands. They are not Moses' commandments, Jewish commandments, and they certainly are not optional suggestions. They are as you read them in the text. That's it. Can't modify them. Nothing's changed. You said it. Dr. Pratt, you said it. If Yahweh changed his mind, I am not following him. He didn't. He's the same then, today. The first commandment, the first word, is verse 2 out of chapter 20, and it says, I am Yahweh your Elohim. That's it. That's the first command. I am Yahweh your Elohim, and to make sure that we don't confuse him with someone else, he says, I am the one who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim, out of the house of slavery. That does two things by saying that. It is reinforcing the fact that he did it, the first Exodus. It is also telling us exactly who the speaker is. There is no other Yahweh. Consequently, if this is the first word, this isn't what's on all the, the artwork things, 10 Commandments I've seen everywhere else. First commandment doesn't say this, but this is the first commandment. The second commandment is in verse 3 through 6. It's kind of multiple parts. It says, you are to have no other mighty ones against my face. The Hebrew, the word panav can also mean in my face or before me, but it is against or smack in his face. Anything that is an idol that we put in front of him or over him is not what he wants. And it is in his face. And this, we talked once before that one of the words for idol, galul, means also traditions, teachings, dogma, so on. So when someone says, we don't have to do that anymore, aren't you glad? I heard that. No. You have just put that idol, the galul, in Yahweh's face and said, no, I don't have to do that. Do not make idols. So there's a prohibition, don't have one in his face, and don't make one. Now this kind of, we get the idea, well, you take some gold and you silver and a wooden thing and you make an idol. It can also be assigning something as an idol. All kinds of things. And I don't want to go into all of it because I got a note here that says no rabbit trails. So just don't make things or whatever into an idol. Do not worship idols. That's a whole separate part. Don't bow your knee to something else besides Yahweh. Now, it also discusses, in the do not worship, do not bow down to them nor serve them. This is a picture of what everybody thinks. And we know this is true again because it's black and white. We got this stone thing there and we're bowing down and worshiping it and all this other kind of stuff. It's not just that. It's everything that we have put before him our jobs, our families, our cars. Of course, now they don't have any cool cars anymore. So. And the second command continues, do not bow down to them nor serve them. Yahweh is a jealous El. He comes right out and says, I am a jealous God. Period. I don't like you messing around with somebody else. Think about your wife, or your husband, depending on who you are. You going to let them fool around with someone else? No. There is a legitimate jealousy, and that's it. And he is legitimately jealous. Idolatry sins of the father are also put upon the children. And part of that is the father's going to teach the children the wrong stuff. Okay, I have a really strong peeve, and I have this when I started learning Hebrew. In verse 6, the word grace, kindness, loving kindness, and all that other stuff, all those other terms, is the word chesed. It is a specific word that means grace, unmerited favor. We didn't really deserve it, but Yahweh gave it to us anyway. That's real grace, not greasy grace, not some kind of a nebulous thing. It's a solid thing. There are certain versions of Scripture. I don't really want to mention the NIV, but I'm going to. The non-inspired version. It has the word love instead of the word grace, or similar word. That's wrong. The word for love is ahava. There are 151 times in the Old Testament that the word chesed is used as the word grace. And it means just what I said. There are only 50 times in the New Testament that the similar word exists. So, there's more grace in the Old Testament than in the New. How do we take care of that? The NIV translates almost all of them in the Old Testament as love. There's a few places where they translate it outright as grace. So they do know the difference. So if you have an NIV, scratch that out and write grace over it. The third commandment, Exodus 20, verse 7. Do not bring the name of Yahweh your Elohim to naught. Okay, I don't know what naught means. Naught means emptiness, nothingness, and it is a form of idolatry. Using the name, if it becomes something that has taken over or that has become the most common thing we say, think of our own English language. How many times does the word God appear in all kinds of things? Yes, that's not Yahweh's name, but to you all it is. So it's the same thing. The third commandment, do not bring his name to naught. It's also speaking of vain oath. I cannot, how many people say, I swear to God, that's the truth. And they don't do it. It is taking his name in vain. It is speaking of vain oath. You know, like if you're in court and you're doing this kind of thing or whatever it is where you're raising your hand and all that stuff, that's another story. That's making an oath that says, I will speak the truth, and Yahweh's my witness. Or God is my witness, as you want to say. Moving right along, the fourth commandment from verses 8 through 11. The Sabbath command. He comes right out. First 3, he's talking about, this is my relationship with you. This is how you will act towards Me. That's it. Not anything complicated. Then he says that we will also have the Shabbat. The Shabbat command says, what does it say? Remember the Sabbath day. In the Deuteronomy repeat of the 10 words, it says guard the Sabbath day. And then it carries on in the Exodus. Remember the Sabbath day? To set it apart. Many of our English translations say to make it holy or something like that. Today in American English, we have no idea what the word holy means. Holy cow. It is used everywhere. Batman. It's in everything we talk about. So let's skip that word. The word actually means set apart. I'm taking this thing and I'm setting it apart from all the other stuff that I have. That's all Yahweh wants. You set this thing apart. It ain't one of your days to go playing around doing all the stuff you want to do. It's my day, he says. Just set it apart. And when you do that, in case we get confused as to which day Yahweh's talking about. I mean, this is serious, because I've seen Christian versions of this where they say Sunday instead of the Sabbath day. They say the Lord's day. What in the world is that? It's not the same thing. One of them songs said something about Yeshua is what? The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Absolutely true. When did he create us? Sixth day. What was the very next thing that Adam did? Sabbath. Just like that. You know, he probably created him in the late afternoon. You were talking about time, daily times. Late afternoon, so the very next thing he's going to do is near sunset, Sabbath. Verse 9 and 10 will clear this up for us completely. 6 days shall you labor and do all your work. But the 7th day is the Sabbath of Yahweh your Elohim. Well, is the 7th day today, 2017, the same as it was 6,000 years ago at creation? Yes. Yep. You think Yahweh's going to make a boo-boo somehow about that 7th day thing? He really means this thing. It's his thing. Okay? His. We don't understand his thing, but it is. It is the same day. And by the way, rabbis have looked at that a lot. Some of the literature is available, or you can find some of the stuff in the Talmud where they talk about this. They look back and they are certain, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that it is. This day is the 7th day. The 7th day is the Shabbat. The word Shabbat, very complicated. Day of rest, intermission, to cease. Stop doing your stuff. The 7th day is the Shabbat. It applies to everyone within your gates. You, your son, your daughter, your male and female servants, your cattle, and your stranger who is within your gates. You got a visitor, Sabbath belongs to them. You want to have some work done, somebody wants to rebuild your deck, that's fine. You can't do it on the Sabbath. It's that simple. Now, I'm going to rabbit trail a tiny bit, okay? The buying and the selling is not discussed in the Torah. Buying and selling on the Sabbath is discussed in the prophets. People were buying and selling on the Sabbath day. What happens is, to us right here, what happens is we're forcing that person, the restaurant owner and all those people in the restaurant, to be there and work for us on the Sabbath. That means don't go to lunch after services on the Sabbath. Wait till after dark. Then you can do whatever you want. I went down when I went to Yeshiva, it was at Pasadena, and the synagogue was in Beverly Hills. Nice place. Weird place. Really weird place. On Saturday evening, about an hour or so after, or when it was dark, everybody goes to the Chinese restaurant. It's hilarious. They're all walking along, they got all their stuff on, their hats, their peyote and everything else, and it just, anyway. And the reason they give them an hour is so the restaurant can open up, stuff like that, to make sure the Sabbath's actually passed. Don't force somebody else to work for you on the Sabbath. The fourth command, the seventh day is the Sabbath. Verse 11 says, for the 6 days, oh, by the way, this is why I'm giving you the Sabbath. In 6 days, he made the heavens, the earth, sea, everything. And then he rested on the seventh day. Therefore, he blessed the Sabbath day and set it apart. When we celebrate Sabbath, I think I've said this once, maybe twice, we are enjoying his creation. We are participating in his creation. I mean, how cool can you get? That is something. We are actually enjoying something that he did at the beginning of time. And here we are. We're going to be a part of it. Yes, I love it. The seventh day is the Sabbath. So, where do we get the idea that what we do is so important we have to work 7 days a week? The employer says so. I want you in here on Saturday. I'm not saying go tell them to take a hike or something like that. You have to be a little prudent. We are in exile. Don't ever forget that. Right now, until that second Exodus, we're in exile. And we got to follow their rules first. Although we put Yahweh ahead of everybody. They're the ones that are going to tell us, okay, you got to work on Saturday. And you do that, you don't do it a couple of weeks. And he says, I got somebody else to take your job. Goodbye. The fifth commandment. Where is that? There it is. Respect. It says in the Scriptures edition. Or honor your father and your mother, so that your days are prolonged upon the soil which Yahweh your Elohim has given you. By the way, I looked up the Hebrew words for respect or honor, and they mean respect or honor. Give them respect or honor. Oops, wait a minute, I want to get back to that again. Come here. There you are. It has nothing to, this is a command with a promise, so that it will go well with you. And then, nowhere do I find a disclaimer that says, oh, if your parents were really mean and cruel and stuff like that, you don't have to do this. Becky. Okay, this is serious stuff. This is the one commandment I heard years ago, way back, that flipped me out. The guy up front, this is one time the preacher was really on, and he said, doesn't say if they've been good. Okay. I didn't know how to do all that, but it worked itself out eventually. All right, the sixth commandment, you do not murder. I looked up the Hebrew in this. Ratzach. And it means murder. Doesn't mean kill. It means murder. Premeditated is one of the other words associated with that. Premeditated, killing somebody. I don't like him. I'm going to put his lights out. That's it. The seventh, commandment, where's that? You do not commit adultery. Na'af, excuse me, na'af. And that word means adultery. We know what adultery is, yes? Don't do it. Wow. Ganav is steal. You do not steal. That means taking something that ain't yours, like our government does. Excuse me. In any event, don't steal. We can't make these things say anything else. There's no secret. At the Peshat, the plain text level, don't steal. The 9th commandment, you do not bear false witness against your neighbor.
Was the 8th or the 9th?
The 8th was steal.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
There's 9. Oh, not there yet. Come on back. There you go. The word is ana, means answer, respond, testify against your neighbor. You go to court. Now that's what everybody thinks of when testify. Well, how about telling your other neighbor, you know, them guys, they are really whatever. It's the same thing. You're testifying a thing against the other speaker. In Yeshua's day, in late Second Temple times, by speaking against somebody was slamming their character and was exactly the same thing as murder. Because you've just diminished this person in the eyes of everybody else. Don't spread lies. Now, it doesn't say so, but by assumption, it means do not lie. And it makes sense. Don't lie about anything. 10th command. Do not cover your neighbor's stuff. And it spells it out. I sure like that guy's 57 Chevy. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm going to go take it from him. That's already covered. I love that 57 Chevy. Every time I see it go by, I'm just drooling all over the floor. I love that guy's watch. Man, look at the suit he's got on. Oh, I love that. That's what this is talking about. Your heart says, I like that stuff in a fashion that you want it. You're willing to go grab it and take it from him. That's what covet's talking about. Oh, and by the way, the Hebrew word for covet's still covet. All of these commands are easy to understand at the plain text level. Now here's a issue I have. All of those signs that we see everywhere, and this also applies to Jews, all of those signs just simply either give numbers, 1 through 10, Aleph through Yud, or they shorten them up into little teeny-weeny phrases. I'm sorry, the 4th command is so much more than a phrase. It is all that other stuff that has to be a part of it. It's really important to read the other stuff. It's not just commentary, it's the command. In Cholet, Ecclesiastes, I don't like that word, I have no idea what it means. 12:13, it says, let us hear the conclusion of the entire matter. Fear Elohim and guard his commands. This applies to all mankind. Everybody. It's not a salvation issue. You are already saved. That's a done deal. Over. You don't need to worry about that. You have accepted Yeshua. You are saved. This is to say, I love Yahweh. I'm going to do what he says to do. I love Yeshua. I'm going to do what he says to do. Can't tell you how many songs I've heard. Love you, Jesus. Okay. How come you're not doing what you're supposed to do? He wants you to do it. Not me. In that book it says, you do this. To be continued. All of his commands are really a guardrail. And if we follow them, it's like following the food commands. Man, if you don't eat pig meat, you're not going to get the stuff that's in pig meat. Catch it. If you don't eat shrimp, you're not going to have the stomach problems you always have, says I to me. Thank you.
Testing.
Mine's off.
Okay, thank you, Rabbi. So part of our goal here is to take our Old Testament, because a lot of times, a lot of places, they just teach mainly out of the New Testament. So part of our goal here is take the Old Testament and bring it to us today with what the meaning that's there for us today. So that's what we want to do. Last week on Shabbat was Bishalot, and for me, I just want to, there was a lot that went on there in Bishalot, but I want to talk about three things from Bishalot. The Israelites were tested 3 times. They left Egypt, remember? They left Egypt, and then you see the handout there on the path they took, and as soon as they crossed the Red Sea, they were tested 3 times. So what I want to share with you is we look for what's happened in the past, because this book here, this Bible, is screaming to Christians today to tell us what's already happened is what's going to be, what's about to happen, okay? And it's screaming, and very few people are hearing it. The Israelites were tested 3 times, okay, after they crossed the Red Sea. It's the journey to the Promised Land, okay? Ours is a journey to the millennial reign, okay? It says in verse 3, Moses ascended to God, and the Lord called to him from the mountain, saying, So shall you say to the house of Jacob, 12 tribes, and tell the sons of Israel. Why did they write it that way? Romans 11:19, those grafted in. You follow me? He's giving you the definition of the sons of Israel, anyone grafted in. There was a mixed multitude that came out of Egypt. They saw what this God Yahweh had done, and they said, hey, I want to be on his team. I want him to be my God. So they were grafted in. Now, did all of them do what was right? No, they didn't. But this is the mixed multitude. This is being grafted in. So who is Christianity today? We're grafted in. So who are we? We're the sons of Israel. Okay? Verse 5. And now, if you obey me, that means all the promises are conditional. See, I believe if I say a sinner's prayer, God's going to watch my back, right? Don't we all kind of think that in a way? God's going to watch my back. I said a sinner's prayer. I had to say one several times. Because I'd say a sinner's prayer and then go do my own thing, And then I'd come crying about 5-10 years later because, he wasn't watching my back like I thought he was. He was in a way, but not like I thought he was. And I had to repent and do it again. Okay, but it finally it stuck, okay? So anyway, it says, so salvation is conditional in a way. So, and now, if you obey me and keep my covenant, you shall be a treasure, a special treasure, out of all the people of the earth. For mine is the entire earth. In 1 Peter 2, 8 through 10. Okay, I just read verse 5 in Exodus 19. It says, now, if you obey me and keep my Torah, you shall be a treasure, special treasure. What is Peter quoting here in 2 Peter 2, verse 8 through 10? They stumble because they disobey the message, Torah. But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, people belonging to God, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into light. Once you were not a people, but now you are the people of God. You are Israel. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. So Peter here, that's what happens sometimes when we read the New Testament. We don't relate it to the Old Testament. When he's quoting this verse in Exodus 19:5, and what is the if part of that? If you obey me and keep my covenant. So does that mean Christianity is in covenant? It sure does. We're in covenant. When we say a sinner's prayer, we're in covenant. It says, and you shall be, verse 6, and you shall be to me, this is Exodus 19, verse 6, and you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the children of Israel, to Christians. Didn't change. So this is what he's saying to Christians today. Now I want to read Hosea 4 and 6. We've heard this one before. My people are destroyed because of a lack of knowledge. And then it goes on to say, because you have rejected Torah, I also reject you as my priest. Okay, called us to be priest. But here he's saying, I'll reject you as my priest. So can Christians lose their salvation? Okay, so we're going to get to that in a few minutes. And then the people said, all that Yahweh has said we will do. That's like saying a sinner's prayer. When you say, Jesus, I invite you into my heart, be my Lord, be my Savior, forgive me of all my sin. We're agreeing to do all that he says to do. See, we're entering into covenant. It's the same as a sinner's prayer. Okay, we're just about to get to Revelation. Verse 9, and the Lord said to Moses, behold, I am coming to you in a cloud. In order that the people hear when I speak to you. Verse 11, and they shall be prepared for the third day. So you're to clean the people, for on the third day is when I'm coming. Okay? Now, there's lots of verses I could have gone to give you examples of the third day. The first living things, plants, etc., were created on the third day. We're talking about life. The third high holy day, and the high holy days are back there in the handout, and it's on the bulletin board, is first fruits. When did Yeshua receive life? The third high holy day. First fruits. Jonah was in the belly of a whale, but on the third day, the fish spit him out. He received life. It's all about life. Pharaoh declares all male babies to be killed. Moses was hid for 3 months, from the 6th to the 9th month. And on the 3rd month, his mother put him in a basket. He floated down the river, the Nile, and Pharaoh's daughter found him. He received life. Why? How do I know he received life then? Weren't all male Hebrew children supposed to be dead? Babies dead? Yes. John 2:19. Jesus says, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. So did he raise it up when he was resurrected from the grave on the third day? Yes. But what about the future? Is he going to raise up his temple again on the third day? And I say he is. Acts 9:9. Saul was without sight for 3 days. So, has there been a word for Christianity that hasn't been spoken yet? He was without understanding, without sight for 3 days, but on the third day, he receives life, and I'm saying that there is. Luke 24, the road to Emmaus. Yeshua says, he says he opens the scripture of Moses and the prophets to the men. And what did the men say? Well, it's been the third day since he passed away, since he was killed. Don't you know what's going on? It's on the third day. And that's when he opened up Moses and the prophets to the followers. We're in that third day right now. And now Yeshua is opening up Moses and the prophets. So in verse 11, it says, and they shall be prepared. So we're to cleanse ourselves because on the third day, Yeshua is coming in his second coming to save us. So we're to cleanse ourselves. For on the third day, the Lord will descend before the eyes of all the people upon Mount Sinai. And then in verse 13, it says, when the ram's horn sounds a loud, drawn-out blast, they may ascend the mountain in the cloud. So this is the second thing I want to point out. There's a cloud. There's a blast of the ram's horn. And then in verse 16, it says, so it is repeating it. It says, it came to pass on the third day, there was a thick cloud, there was a blast of the shofar. And in verse 19, it says, the shofar grew louder. Moses would speak and God would answer him with a voice. Okay, where do we hear these three things? Cloud, shofar blast, voice. 1 Thessalonians 4:17. So I'm taking the Old Testament, this Torah portion in Exodus, and bringing it to our time. Okay? So, is every word or sentence in our Bible correct and true? In a way, yes, it is. But also in a way, no, it's not. Why? How do I know that? It's because of translation and translator bias when they wrote it. Okay? So now, the original Hebrew, it was written in Hebrew or Aramaic. So the original Hebrew is correct and true. And the Old Testament is required, but if there's any contradiction in the New Testament, you have to go back to the Old Testament to figure that out. Like, you read one verse that says, oh, we don't live under the law. Or you read a verse like last week when we talk about where John says it was before the Passover. But Matthew, Mark, and Luke said it was during Passover, the first day of unleavened bread. So they both can't be right. So you have to figure that out. So 2 Timothy 3. This is a handout. You've got it. So we want to talk about 2 Timothy 3. And the context of this chapter, verse 1, in the last days. Okay? So now I'm relating what's going to happen in the last days to everything in 2 Timothy 3. Verse 8. It says, Jannes and Jambres resisted Moses. They resist the truth. So he's giving an example. Paul's giving an example to Timothy. He's trying to teach Timothy. And he's saying, don't resist Moses. He says, but you, Timothy, fully know what I've taught, what I, Paul, have taught. You, Timothy, know what I've taught. Verse 14. So continue in the things which thou hast learned, and in that which has been entrusted to thee. Because from a child thou hast known Torah, the Holy Scriptures. It goes on to say, because all Scripture is given by inspiration of God and is profitable for doctrine, for correction, for instruction, that the man of God may be perfect, thoroughly furnished unto good works. So is Paul talking about the New Testament here? No. He's talking about the Old Testament. He's talking about Moses, what Moses wrote, okay? And the prophets and the Psalms. He says, because Timothy, you've been taught this since you were a child, okay? So I want you to be a good man of God, and I want you to be perfect. That word is G739. It means complete. So complete actually is a better word. So now let's go to the next slide. Matthew 26:17. Now we talked about this last week. It says on day one, the Greek word there is prontos, of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, Nisan 15. See, I'm going back to the Old Testament because the Feast of Unleavened Bread was on Nisan 15. That's been established throughout the Bible. It's considered a high holy day. And Yeshua Jesus says, make preparation for the Passover. But it couldn't have been the Passover because you're to kill the Passover lamb on Nisan 14. Okay? Mark says the same thing. On the day one of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, when you weren't to do any work, you weren't to kill animals. And then Luke 22 says, then came the day of unleavened bread when the Passover lamb was killed. Well, Passover lamb was never killed on unleavened bread. John 13:1. Here's John saying the same thing, talking about the same thing. It says it was just before the Passover feast. And then in verse 27 to 30, he talks to Judas, and Jesus says, what you are about to do, Judas, do it quickly. And then no one at the meal understood what Jesus meant. So they thought that Jesus was telling Judas to go buy what was needed for the feast. Passover feast. Well, you can't spend money on a high Sabbath or any Sabbath. You see? So which one is right there? It's number 4, John. Okay, he's right. So does that make all the others wrong? No. They're just a little incomplete. Do you follow that? And I'm going to do the same thing now. This other handout is on 1 Thessalonians 4:17. Why is study important? The church is waiting on the rapture. And most are not concerned about tribulation. I'm saying most. Now, so when we get into the Greek, like I did with the Passover verses in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, okay, and do the same thing I did there, I'm trying to show how I believe it should have been written, okay, not maybe translator bias. Because the way they wrote it, and you can read it in your Bible, it says, 1 Thessalonians, and this is I love this verse because it's my birthday, April 17th. You know, I just applied 1 Thessalonians to it, you know. Everybody's got to have a verse that they apply to their birthday. I mean, you just got to do that, okay? So think about that. But 1 Thessalonians 4:17. Then we who are alive shall be caught up together at the same time, or shall be caught up together with the resurrected dead in a cloud to meet Yeshua in the air. Well, we know what the church teaches about that. Is that what we've been taught? No, it's not. Okay? Now, let's get into the meaning of it. And you can see where I went to the Greek words, because, see, in Strong's, you can take the word G3588, alive, And it can mean several things. One of the meanings is not translated in the first resurrection. Or not translated. Not translated. I added in the first resurrection. Because we're talking about the Yeshua's return, so we're talking about the first resurrection, right? Shall be caught up. That's G726. So another word, caught up, and some say rapture or snatched or whatever. Another word there in Strong's means removed from harm's way. Together, that's the Greek word 2670, at the same time, with the resurrected dead in a cloud. That's G3507. The cloud that led, and I'm telling you, that cloud is the cloud that led the Israelites in the wilderness. It is not, to meet Yeshua in the air. It is not heaven. It's simply to meet Yeshua in the air. So now we'll look at it without all that confusion. 1 Thessalonians 4:17. Then we who are not translated in the first resurrection and survive shall be removed from harm's way at the same time with the resurrected dead in the cloud that led the Israelites in the wilderness to meet Yeshua in the air. Revelation 16:17 says, and the seventh angel poured out the vial of the seven last plagues into the air, and we're protected. Revelation 21:19, then he says, then the angel says, with the seven last plagues, and the angel said, I will show you the bride, those resurrected and those protected who are going to enter the 1,000 years, not in heaven, but on earth. So, and then Ephesians 2:2 is just another verse there in your handout. It says, where in times past ye walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience. It's talking about the air here. That's where we're going to be protected. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout. That's Exodus 19, verse 13. With the voice of the archangel. That's verse 19. And with the trumpet of God. That's also verse 13. Then we who are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and will ever be with the Lord. Why is the Lord going to do that for us? Because we honor his Torah. The dead are raised, the remnant is protected in a cloud. Exodus 20, verse 19. The people were afraid, thought they were going to die. So look for parallels. If the tribulation were happening tomorrow, you might think you're about to die. Verse 20, Jesus comes to lift us up, so that we shall begin, we'll be in awe of him. Verse 24, and it says, wherever I allow my name to be mentioned, every Sabbath, I will come to you and bless you. And that's his church here. That's greater blessing, okay? So, Matthew 25. Now I'm going to bring it home, hopefully. Matthew 25, the kingdom of heaven. Is the parable of the talents, or Torah. I'm saying that talents, we think of money, but I'm saying it's Torah. It says, unto one he gave 5 talents, to another 2 talents, and to another 1 talent. Every man according to his ability. Okay, what are we talking about here? 5 talents, 5 books. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. 2 talents, 2 books, prophets, and the Psalms. Or how about 1 book? Our testimony. Everyone here at Yeshua Sabbath Church have been given talents or Torah. Some 5, some 2, some 1. And we receive salvation in the first resurrection. Saying a sinner's prayer and doing no Torah is bearing your salvation, resulting in tribulation. Salvation is then received for Christians that don't do Torah in the second resurrection. The parable of the 10 virgins. 5 wise virgins go in the first resurrection, and they're protected and receive life, for Torah is life. The 5 wise virgins keep Torah and enter the kingdom. And we're talking about Christians here. The 5 foolish virgins don't go to hell. The virgins, they love the Lord. They just simply go through the tribulation. They are resurrected in the second resurrection and receive their salvation then. It's because, it's like if I enter an oath with my wife and say, I'm not going to commit adultery on you, I'm going to do that. Okay? And but if I ignore the covenant I've entered with God, and even Yeshua says, if you love me, keep my commandments, but I'm saying I can do my own thing like I did in the church for so many years, you're going to suffer. And 2 Peter says, you're done with sin, and sin is transgression of Torah, when you've suffered enough in your body. So if you say, I'm not going to do this Torah stuff, these dietary laws, these feast days, I'm going to go to church on Sunday, if you say that, you're saying, in a way, you're not done with suffering. Matthew 22:10. Hebrew people were invited. This is a good explanation of Matthew 22, okay? And then, Rabbi, we're about done here. Hebrew people were invited to the wedding. You've read the verses, but they wouldn't come. Why would they not come? They were too busy. So the king says, go into the highways and gather everyone that is invited. And I say all Christians, both good, wise virgins, and bad, foolish virgins. And the wedding was furnished with gifts. Christians. But one, the foolish Christian, did not wear the proper wedding garment and went into tribulation. Because he says, I'm going to throw you where there's weeping and you're going to where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. The wise virgins ruled and reigned during the 1,000 years. And then after the 1,000 years, the books are opened and then judgment begins. So 2 Corinthians 5:10, that's the judgment seat of Christ. Because if you're faithful to the Lord and you're resurrected or protected, you're qualified. You're not judged. You're qualified. Okay? Revelation 7:20, it says the throne of Yahweh and Yeshua where everyone is judged, the judgment seat. That's when it is. So, we'll have the Aaronic blessing. And if some of that went like this, it's okay. It did that for me for many years. But there's a lot of truth in what I just shared with you. And I know it's deep. But if we've been taught this stuff since Sunday school, it would be different. But we haven't. Yeah. They weren't wrong. They weren't bad. It's just been incomplete.
The Aaronic benediction. I love this. I love doing it. I don't know. I love receiving it. It's cool. Yivreka Yahweh v'yishmereka. Yair Yahweh panaveleka v'yikuneka. Yisa Yahweh panaveleka yasem lecha shalom. Yahweh bless you and keep you. Yahweh make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Gracious. Yahweh lift up his countenance upon you, his face, and give you his shalom, his peace. Shabbat shalom, y'all.
Shalom.